Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and today is June 7th, 2023. Things are happening in Iraq, so let's get right into all of this. First, for those of you calling in for the first time, I would appreciate it if you could hit the subscribe button and share our calls with other individuals that you think might be interested in the things that we have to say. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other pre-valued currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information we believe to be most relevant. Of course, what is of most interest to us is the window for the reinstitution of the dinar in country. In my opinion, the reinstitution could literally happen at any time. These are very interesting times. There's a lot going on a lot of levels, so I've tried to distill the information as best I can and review this with you on a weekly basis. So let's go ahead and get started. First, by way of prologue, in order to kind of put what I discuss in context, I'm going to start by saying, in my opinion, with regard to the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, we've already gone beyond the point of no return. I see no scenario where Iraq can continue under a program rate. They've depegged from the U.S. dollar. They are de-dollarizing. They finally abandoning, after nearly 20 years, or actually 20 years, their multiple currency system. They can no longer operate under a program rate if the Iraqi dinar is the only currency that they can utilize. Add on top of that the possibility of a recession means that they're going to need to move quickly to resolve the issue with regard to the Iraqi dinar. Now, there were some seminal events that took place in 2023, which again point to the inevitable reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. We go back to February. We know that the Iraqi delegation had gone to Washington to meet with the Federal Reserve Bank and the Treasury to discuss their progress in terms of their economic and monetary reforms. The CBI and the government of Iraq was given until June 1st to complete and resolve all issues with regard to the economic and monetary reform, which would, of course, include the passage of their budget and the reinstitution of their currency. On May 30th, the Kurdistan regional government was declared unconstitutional by the Federal Supreme Court and summarily dissolved. Now, this is important because a lot of the bickering between the Kurds or Kurdistan and the Kurdistan government created a lot of friction and a lot of problems. The court cited two articles of the Iraqi Constitution. They're short. I'm going to read them here. Articles 13 and Article 14. Article 13 of the Iraqi Constitution states, quote, "This Constitution is the preeminent and supreme law in Iraq and shall be binding in all parts of Iraq without exception. Second, no law that contradicts this Constitution shall be enacted. Any text in any regional constitution or any other legal text that contradicts the Constitution of Iraq shall be considered void." So basically what they're saying is there's no carve-outs. There are no quote-unquote autonomous regions that operate outside the Constitution of Iraq. And similar to our Constitution, any law that's repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. Article 14, Iraqis are equal before the law without discrimination based on gender, race, ethnicity, nationality, origin, color, religion, sect, that's an important word, belief or opinion, or economic or social status. So they're eliminating the tribalism, they're eliminating the sectarianism, they're eliminating the class structure. They're basically saying all Iraqis in any part of Iraq whether they're part of a quasi-autonomous zone or not, are all equal in the eyes of Iraqi law and the Constitution, and that no laws passed in any of the regions that contradicts the Constitution is valid. It's null and void. So that's very critical. This occurred on May 30th. On May 31st, the Iraqi delegation returned to the United States for one day. It's just so typical of them. The drop-dead date is June 1st. So they wait all the way to May 31st to show up. As is the case I've stated many times in the past, in the West, a drop-dead date is a drop-dead date. In the East, a drop-dead date is the date to renegotiate. So, right on schedule, on May 31st, this Iraqi delegation returns to the United States for one day. They asked and did receive an extension for that drop-dead date on the completion of the economic and monetary reforms. So on June 1st, they stopped all transactions with Western Union. Now, this is significant because what this means is that the corrupt individuals in Iraq, whether they're officials or not, cannot ferret the IQD out of the country at the 11th hour in order to then take advantage of the global revaluation of the currency. They also successfully launched their electronic payment platform. Now, this is important because what has the country done? They've depegged from the U.S. dollar. They are de-dollarizing. Then they had to institute fines and even imprisonment for those that utilize the dollar. And then lastly, by going digital through their electronic payment platform, they're making it virtually impossible, since they're not utilizing the hard currency, for the corrupt officials to try to make a profit on the spread and some other nefarious activities. Then we have, on an international scale, we have the International Monetary Fund releasing statements and pushing very hard for the passage of the budget. Now, of course, the IMF is salivating at the prospect of putting the new Iraqi dinar in their basket of currencies, because the estimates right now, and they are just estimates, but they're not surprising to me, the estimates are anywhere between $4.25 and $4.85 per dinar. So that's very important. Iraq is also in the process of accepting an invitation to join the BRICS nations along with Saudi Arabia. So the current administration has done a very good job of basically devaluing the U.S. dollar, whether it be domestically through printing of money and inflation, the inherent inflation that they had to know it would create. Then there is the loss of the petrodollar as the yuan and the ruble begin, at least in the Middle East, to replace the petrodollar. So things are not looking good for the dollar, and I'm going to explain why that is something we need to be concerned about. So again, why, in my opinion, are we looking at the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar in the near future? As I said, what's happened over the last, say, 6 months, depegging from the U.S. dollar, de-dollarizing, the penalties for utilizing the dollar, and now the electronic payment system. So we're witnessing, unfortunately, the decline of the U.S. dollar globally and the ascendancy of currencies like the IQD globally. The U.S. Federal Reserve, however, remains the single largest holder of IQD outside of Iraq. So there are some things that can be advantageous for the United States. Add to the fact that they are the largest single holder of IQD, there are approximately 10 million Americans out there that are holder of IQD, and of course they're going to go to the bank to do their exchange, and so now the Treasury and the Central Bank of the United States will be holding all of that IQD as well. And they can leverage that. They can use that for the purchase of oil, and they do have an arrangement with Iraq to be able, through oil credits, to purchase oil at $32 a barrel. And since oil is 2.5 times that almost in price today, that's at least something that the United States can utilize to be reimbursed for the cost of liberating Iraq. And even if they don't utilize those currencies with Iraq, they can hold them as a gold derivative to help support our own currency. Remember, Iraq is a very rich nation. Their currency is going to be gold-backed or at least commodity-backed. I've, on a number of calls, gone into great detail about why I believe that Iraq per square mile might be the richest country in the world. So the United States can either utilize the dinar, VIQD, to purchase oil at $32 a barrel, or, as I said, they could hold the dinar at least short term and use it as a gold derivative to back our currency. But we do have a post-RV problem, at least something to consider. Unfortunately, and I don't think this can be not denied at this point, the Biden administration is destroying the U.S. dollar, as I said before, both domestically through the printing of money and inflation internally, internationally through the loss of the petrodollar and other issues. So when we go to the bank, we will be exchanging our IQD, which is in ascendancy, with the U.S. dollar, which is losing value. And add to that the fact that the United States is in the process of transitioning to the central bank digital currency, basically eliminating hard currency, going to a digital currency, which, of course, as they say, possession is 9/10 of the law. They will possess the currency physically through the digital system. We will not have the money in our hands. We will not be able to do whatever we want with it. Whatever we do, they will have knowledge of, and unfortunately, to some extent, will have to give their consent in order for us to exchange that money for whatever good or service we wish to purchase. But this is just another reason why you're going to need to establish our package of trusts. And I want to dovetail into that because now that we're getting close to the end, the things that we've discussed for over a decade are even have more application now than they did then, because what we've witnessed over the last decade is the creation of a high surveillance, high tax environment, and then lay on top of that, once again, the central bank digital currency. So when you establish our family package of asset protection trusts, there are some very important benefits that you will enjoy that no American citizen without such a trust will enjoy. First, you'll enjoy the privacy and anonymity. Now, individuals can establish LLCs, sub-S corporations, limited family partnerships, and the like. However, those entities are statutory by nature, meaning they're regulated on a state-by-state basis, and all of the information about those entities and what's incorporated within those entities is a matter of public record. Unlike our trust package, no one will know what's within your trust, what your estate comprises. That's sealed. And that trust, unlike these other entities, is not registered with the city, the municipality, the county, the state, or the federal government. It's completely and totally private. Second, by establishing this trust, you will avoid personal IRS scrutiny, particularly where the currencies are concerned, because when you do your exchange and your currencies have been assigned to the trust, all of that's done through the trust. So the IRS will not be auditing you personally. And even if they determine they want to audit your trust, which is unlikely because the IRS would prefer to audit 5 Joe lunchboxes rather than one sophisticated trust package, they can't do a 6-year audit because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. Third, within this trust package is our gifting subtrust. This allows you not only to gift currencies to family and friends prior to the revaluation, but if you gift to them through the trust, you will then control the post-RV proceeds. And there's a number of reasons why you may want to do that. You may be gifting currencies to minors. You may be gifting currencies to individuals with disabilities. You may be gifting currencies to individuals you don't think have the maturity, the responsibility or even the intellect to manage a substantial amount of money, so you'll be able to handle that yourself. Fourth, by establishing this trust, this will allow your estate, when you pass it on to heirs, to avoid the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. Now, ordinarily, probate can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But if your estate's being challenged, or if it's a complicated estate, probate could take years and in a few rare cases even decades. Then there's the federal estate tax. A portion of your estate in excess of approximately $10 million could be taxed as high as 65%. But if your assets are within this trust, not only will you avoid probate entirely, but you'll also avoid the federal estate tax, meaning your heirs will receive 100 cents on a dollar of your estate. Lastly, the asset protection that's available under this trust, both pre- and post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Tax. Very simply stated, by transferring the currency, the pre-RV currencies, out of title to the trust, that is before they revalue, doesn't matter what they're worth post-RV. You could only be sued for what they were worth at the time of the transfer. So if you had 10 million dinar that you paid $10,000 for, you transferred into our trust. Let's say conservatively they revalue for $1, that's $10 million. You can't be sued for the $10 million. You could only be sued for $10,000 because that's all the currency was worth when you transferred it out of title to the trust. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to call limited liability stop loss. This is created through the segregation of assets. By placing each physical asset in a separate trust, you're isolating the asset so you can never be sued for your entire net worth. I'll just give you one simple example. Let's say post-RV you decide that you're going to purchase rental properties. So you purchase a dozen rental properties. You place each of those rental properties in its own separate subtrust. Well, one day one of your tenants slips and falls, breaks his back, and he decides he wants to sue you. Well, the only thing he can go after is the actual property that he was renting, assuming the suit has any merit at all. He can't go after the other 11 properties because those 11 properties are in separate subtrusts, which under the law are separate legal entities or persons having nothing to do with the rental property in the accident in question. Therefore, this prospective plaintiff has no standing to go after those other assets. So this is why the trust package is important. But let me add one additional thing. Once again, you're going to the bank to exchange your currency for USD, a currency that unfortunately is devaluating both domestically and unfortunately globally now. Then there is the issue of the central bank digital currency. If you have 10 million dinar and you go to the bank and you exchange them, and once again, I use a very conservative estimate of $1 for $10 million, you now have money in a bank where that money is probably not insured. And if it's a central bank digital currency, you don't have absolute control of that money. And even if you do, the federal government will be aware of every single purchase you make, which in my opinion is a grotesque violation of the Constitution under the Fourth Amendment. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to move the money out of the bank. We're going to move the money into tangible assets to minimize our exposure to the central bank digital currency. And because you have the trust, not only can you purchase these tangible assets, but again, you can protect them against potential bad acts in the future by isolating each of these assets in a separate subtrust. So this trust package is valuable as it was the day we created it for Dinarians over a decade ago, is even more critical to protecting your wealth under the circumstances we find ourselves today in the environment created by this current administration. I mean, I'll even go a step further and say a lot of what they're doing is in anticipation of 10 million Americans about to become overnight millionaires. And this is just my opinion. I just don't think they want us to have it. And anything they can do reasonably within the law to to minimize our ability to gather this wealth, protect this wealth, and spend it and manage it in the way we want, they're going to do. But this trust gets around all of that. It circumvents all of that. It circumvents the high surveillance aspect. It circumvents the high tax issue, and it definitely will circumvent the central bank digital currency. I mentioned this on some other calls. A number of states are creating their own state currency, which the Constitution of the United States allows. And one of the things you can do is, to the extent that you need liquidity in the bank, you establish bank accounts in those states. You'll be issued, of course, an ATM card, a credit card if you want it. So you can operate entirely outside of the central bank digital currency system. So this is what we have to discuss for today. I will go to a Q&A here. I'm a little bit rushed today because, frankly, the phones are blowing up. I think people are anticipating a move in Iraq very shortly. And so at the very least, they want to get our initial no-obligation package. Now, our trust is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, financial assets like banking accounts, investment accounts post-RV, one gift sub-trust, which, again, you can utilize to gift currencies to family and friends and control the post-RV proceeds. That sub-trust can be converted to a standard sub-trust at any time, and 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But when we decided to work with Dinarians, we knew that that price tag would be unaffordable for many. So by basically deferring funding of the trust and merely assigning the currencies to it, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. There are several ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front. We'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. That's not possible. We do have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which would basically offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust to you. The balance would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the Iraqi dinar revalues globally, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. So with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust enforced pre-RV should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be actually less than $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Again, our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust enforced for all of the reasons that I've touched on here today. So we're going to go ahead and go to a Q&A here. Let me open the Q&A. While I'm waiting for any potential questions, I'd like to give you our contact information. You can certainly go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. If you wish to be on our email list, you can go to the bottom of that website, put your name and email address in there, and you will be on our email list. We very seldom send out emails, but as we get close to the reinstitution of the dinar, emails may go out fairly regularly. You can go either to our email or our phone if you wish to get our initial no-obligation package. I strongly suggest you get the package. It has a lot of information about us, about the trust, about the currencies. The package does contain everything you need if you wish to proceed with the establishment of your family asset protection trust package. But again, you're absolutely under no obligation to do so. You can review the package, contact us by email or phone if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you, and there will be no consultation fee. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com, and our phone service is 307-274-4122. So let's go ahead and get into our Q&A here. Our first caller is area code 619. That's 619. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, Jim. It's Eddie. How are you?
Eddie, how you doing, my friend?
Good. Great information as always. Thank you so much, sir. Hey, quick question, Jim. Could you share with me a little bit, if you have our master trust and you move monies into another trust outside of the master trust, is that generally considered a taxable event or no?
No.
Did you know that?
First of all, if you mean moving it to another of the trusts within our package, the only trust.
No, not that.
Okay.
Not that. An outside trust.
Well,
similar to what we have. Okay.
If you transfer the money, it should be, from a tax standpoint, ordinarily it should be neutral. However, as I've said in the past, pursuant to Section 643A and B of the Internal Revenue Code, we believe there's a possibility that the profit from the exchange within an irrevocable trust such as ours is tax deferred. Now, when the dinar reinstitutes, we're going to try to compel the IRS to confirm in writing if that's the case. Let's assume hypothetically that that is the case, and if you transact the revaluation within the trust that's tax deferred, that would necessarily mean any dollars that you move out of the trust would then be taxable. So in that case, there would be a tax issue. But let's assume the tax issue isn't an issue at all, and you've got net dollars in there and you want to move it. There should be no taxable event for moving it to another trust, but any dividends and interest that's subsequently earned in that entity would be taxable to that entity.
Gotcha. Okay. That was my question. Thank you.
Okay. Sure, Eddie. Bye-bye now. Our next caller is area code 410. That's 410. Go ahead.
Good morning. My question is, if you can't, if the bank doesn't do the exchange of the dinar, how would you exchange the dinar into the currency?
Well, if the quote-unquote D bank won't do the exchange, you go to another bank, because I can assure you there will be banks in this country that will do the exchange. Any bank that deals in international currencies is not going to take a pass on the dinar. So you're not going to have a problem with the exchange. You may have a problem in the first bank you walk into, but in my opinion, at least what I'm going to do, and not only for myself personally, but for Trust Unlimited, is we're going to probably narrow it down to 4 or 5 banks that we wouldn't mind doing business with. We're going to call all of them, tell them who we are, how many clients we have, and we want to get the best deal for them in terms of the exchange rate and the street rate, and make that available to our clients. Now, I know a lot of people are going to run to the bank with their hair on fire to get their money exchanged as soon as possible, and I understand that. But not only will there be banks available, but because you have the currency, you actually have the leverage, whether you know it or not. And if the banks start doing unreasonable things, like putting a 10 or 21-day hold on your money, or offering you what should be a normal rate in exchange for them managing your money or something like that, you got to be willing to get up and walk out of that bank.
Right. And also, with the trust, will we still be taking the trip to Florida, or how will we be doing the notification also?
Well, we'll let you know in detail once the plans are completed. Disney is getting a little squirrely. They're talking about if we do a seminar, we might have to, depending upon what's going on at the time, people might have to be masked. They might have to have this separation. The cost might go up disordinately. I mean, so if for some reason we feel the Disney thing is not going to be viable, what we'll end up doing is DVD video in office and basically cover the same material. But again, we'll have to wait and see. I think we're going to be okay with the Disney thing right now, because I don't think the pandemic thing is going to be an issue. But if this thing got pushed into the fall, then they might start that nonsense with us again, like they did last year. So we just have to play it by ear. We're kind of on the fly with that.
Okay. And my last question, will we have personal advisors?
If you want our assistance, our attorneys will certainly be willing to assist you. But when it comes to things like specific tax advice, investment, and all of that, we will have some people that you can talk to, but you can work with whomever you want. You're certainly not obligated to work with us, with any of our referrals. You can work with whomever you're comfortable with.
Okay.
It's your money.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
so much.
Sure. Bye-bye. Our next caller is area code 813. That's 813. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. It's a tax question as well. On your website, there's a copy of a tax memorandum from Attorney Bly to you and to a guy named Steve with his last name redacted. And it asks and answers two questions, and I'm a little confused. It says, the first one is, does the mere holding of dinars without cashing after revaluation impose a tax liability upon the holder? And the answer is no. And the second question is, does the creation or transfer of dinars into a irrevocable trust, corporation, or LLC, and the issuance of a beneficial interest shares member interest in favor of the owner of the dinars without cashing the dinars create a taxable event? The answer is yes. My understanding when I listened to you last week that you either said or what I understood was that once the revaluation happens, that's going to create the taxable event. And this memorandum says there's no taxable event until you dispose of them.
That was clear. Yeah. What they were relying on is the fact that Section 98082 and Publication 525 refer to the profit from the exchange as capital gain. If the profit from the exchange is truly capital gain, if that's the case, if the IRS follows suit and says, yeah, that's what it says, that's what it is, then that means that your physical possession of the currency is a capital asset, which means that the tax would occur when you actually exchange. The rub is the last sentence in 98082, which says, if the profit that you would realize from the exchange exceeds $200, you must pay the tax. Now, in my opinion, that means that the taxable event is the increased value of the currency, not the day you go to the bank. The other issue is this, and this again is my opinion. I don't like this bunch in Washington. I don't think they're truthful. I don't think they want us to have the money. In my opinion, irrespective of 98082 and Publication 525, I think they're going to call the profit from the exchange ordinary income, which is why unless I or we get something in writing from the IRS or the Treasury specifically saying it's cap gain, I'm going to pay the ordinary income tax and simultaneously file for a refund citing 98082 and Section 643A and B of the code. Because if they call it ordinary income, I don't pay it. I only have two options, and they're both bad. One is I'm going to have to eat 100% penalty, and you're looking at 39.6% tax plus 5% millionaire surtax bumps it to 44.6%. And 100% penalty on that puts you at 89.5%. I either have to eat that or I have to go to court for 5 years and fight these guys. So I'm going to pay the ordinary income tax and hope I get a refund based on 988E2 and Section 643A and B. But again, I'll only have to do that if we can't get the IRS to confirm in writing their interpretation of the code. If the revaluation happens on June 25th, for example, taxes would be due on July 15th. I don't have time to get a response from the IRS. If the revaluation globally occurs on July 3rd, I have until October 15th. So that's plenty of time to compel the IRS to tell me what the tax implications are prior to having to pay the actual tax on October 15th. So I know that's a long-winded, complicated answer, but it's a complicated situation.
But if this is saying that you don't have a taxable event until you dispose of them, so even if the revaluation happens, if it happens this month and you don't cash them in until next month, then you got until October. And it goes on to this same memo says that it specifically says it's capital gains. It says until any kind of disposition, there is no taxable event. Therefore, if an individual owns dinars and there is a revaluation, the holder will not face any tax until she disposes of them as a cash out. At this point, all amounts over $200 will be treated as a capital gain. Now, that's in the memo that's on your website. Is this correct or is it outdated?
No, I understand that. What I'm telling you is that's what's on the website. I'm telling you what my personal opinion is. My personal opinion, as I said, the underpinning of that is that the IRS, through the statute, through the section of the code, and from their publication, refers to the profit as cap gain. What I'm saying to you is I don't trust the federal government to honor the plain text of the code. So, in my opinion, if we don't get confirmation after the specific reinstitution, if the timing is bad for us on the reinstitution or revaluation, I'm going to pay the ordinary income tax. And I'm going to tell you something else. The IRS listens to our calls. And I'm going to protect Trust Unlimited and myself by saying, when in doubt, pay the ordinary income tax and file for a refund. I don't trust these people. That's where I'm coming from.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your help, and I appreciate your information.
Certainly. Bye-bye now. Hate to get a little rough with the situation, but I'm as those of you listen to our calls know, I'm not real happy with this bunch in Washington, not only because I don't agree with their policies, I don't think they're truthful. And so the only way to protect ourselves, unfortunately, and this is one example, is if there's any doubt at all, just pay the ordinary income tax and file for a refund. Because if there's any way they can take it from you, in my opinion, personally, they will. Our next caller is area code 210. That's 210. Go ahead.
Hey, Jim, it's Ted.
Yes,
just
sir.
a question. I didn't hear anything on the budget. Did the budget pass, or are they rescheduling it?
They're on the third reading.
Okay, no time frame.
Yet. We're not there. Well, if the third, it should be over very, very shortly. And, the other thing is say, well, after the third reading and, if everything goes through, then it's got to go into the Gazette for 30 days. I don't think the Gazette thing's an issue at all. It doesn't have to sit there and cure for 30 days in the Gazette. So I'm hoping this is all over this week.
Okay. I have another question on the trust, but if you can give me a ring afterwards, I'd rather ask you offline.
Okay, hold on. Let me get a write down your phone number here, so I don't want you to give it to me online here. Okay, Ted, I got your number, and I'll give you a call after we're done here. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay, Ted. Bye-bye. Okay, our next caller is, is area code 785. That's 785. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hey, on this IRS issue, okay, you call it ordinary income versus capital gain. Does the ruling, as it states right now, is it capital gain?
Yeah, according to 98082, they refer to the profit from the exchange as cap gain, and publication 525 refers to it as cap gain. But what I'm saying is but the dinar it's like an outlier. In other words, they could make the argument that they're not referring to something as exotic as the physical possession of a currency in a program rate. I don't trust them that they will give us the benefit of the doubt and say, well, we didn't, specifically put a barrier on this currency, so the rule doesn't apply. I just don't trust them. So if we can't resolve the issue, I'm going to pay the ordinary income tax. If you want to pay and I say this to anyone else, if you want to say, well, this is what the code says, I'm paying the capital gain, and you might be fine. On the other hand, and if Ronald Reagan was president or Donald Trump was president, I don't think we'd have a problem, because they want to shrink government. We have people in there that want to grow the government. So they're going to err on the side of collecting as opposed to allowing us to keep what we've earned. So, again, this is just my opinion. I think they're going to call it ordinary income. Believe me, I'd love to be wrong. And if I am, I'll get on here and say, thank God I was wrong. They called it cap gain. But, until I see something in writing from the Treasury or the Federal Reserve saying we honor 980.82 and publication 525, I'm going to assume it's ordinary income.
Okay, but that's my question. What implication does it have on us if it is ordinary versus capital gains the way it states now?
Well, the difference is you're going to pay more in taxes. That's the only implication.
So capital gains is better than ordinary income?
Certainly. Even with the increase in cap gains, you're better off. And if it's cap gain, then you also circumvent the millionaire surtax. Because remember, you're looking at the highest marginal tax bracket on ordinary income plus the 5% millionaire surtax. And God knows what else they're going to try to come up with. But the only way they're going to let us, in my opinion, have this money, because remember, 10 million new millionaires, they're not going to vote for higher taxes and bigger government. So they, so the only shot they have is to get as much of it from us. I'll give you an example. I wouldn't put it past them to have the revaluation happen on the last day in a quarter, so people who are unaware don't realize, hey, you got to pay the taxes in 15 days. Then you go to the bank and they drag their feet, say, well, I got to do my exchange because I got to pay the tax in 3 days. Don't tell me I can't come in for 10 days to do my exchange. The taxes are due in 3 days. This is, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I've watched these people for 2 years and I don't trust them.
Well, that's what my question is. Let's say it did happen tomorrow or in the next 20 days. Okay. That tax then at this point would be due as a capital gains. Am I right? Based on the law the way it states?
Our reading of the code is it's cap gain, but again, they didn't specifically address this rather exotic situation, and all I can give you is my opinion. I think they're I don't care what the code says. I think they're going to call it ordinary income. That's my view.
Okay, so let me ask you this. All right, it happens tomorrow or on the last day of the month, and we have to pay our tax. Okay. If there's no other ruling that says that they switched it from capital gains to ordinary income, then we go ahead and pay the tax due as capital gains, right?
You can do that if you want. I won't. I will pay the ordinary income and simultaneously file for a refund based on 980.82 and 643B. They're not going to. I'd rather they hold on to my money for 6 weeks or 90 days than me pay 100% penalty based on some bizarre argument that the exotic situation with Iraq is not incorporated in the rulings that exist. I just don't trust them. I'm an old man. I'm not going to be in court for 5 years fighting over this. Okay? It is what it is.
Do you think that they're trying to, in other words, they're going to be playing on our
ignorance?
Ignorance, yes.
In my opinion, this is just my opinion. I keep saying it. I don't.
Yeah, I know. And I'm with you on it. I don't trust them as far as I can throw them either. And so I guess we'll just wait, and when that scenario comes,
I'll give you another example. Let's say the revaluation happened on July 5th, meaning taxes wouldn't technically be due until October 15th. So we go to the IRS and say, IRS, we need we are a firm that has a number of clients that have currencies. They have exchanged their currencies. We understand the taxes will be due on October 15th. We want written confirmation of what the tax status is, both in and outside of an irrevocable trust. And let's say they decline to answer. All right?
Right.
What that tells you? That tells you it's ordinary income, right there.
Right.
They decline to answer. What they're saying is we can't confirm what you're reading out of the code. So and of course, once we get to about the 10th of June, I don't want to see it in June. I don't want to see it till July anyway, for all of the reasons we're talking about right now. We waited 10 years. You can't wait 2 more weeks, you know?
Yeah, but I don't trust them. I mean, if that budget gets passed, I mean, they could. This next 20 days is going to be interesting from the tax standpoint. Hopefully, it'll go past that, and we'll get to July.
Well, Iraq doesn't give a you-know-what about what's going on in this country and what the tax status is. If they pass the budget, it's because they passed the budget because it was in their interest to do so. I'm saying from our end, we're dealing with I just don't think we're dealing with honorable players. I don't know how else to say it. I just,
I don't either.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obvious. You can see that. So, all right, Jim, thank you.
Certainly. Bye-bye now. Okay, let's see. Check our callers here. Have I gotten everyone? Okay, our next caller is area code 978. That's 978. Go ahead.
Hi, Jim. It's Leslie calling again.
Yes.
My question is related to Iraqi banks. I had heard somewhere along the line that there may be Iraq banks opening branches here in the U.S. So I'm wondering your thoughts or what you know about that and what your thoughts are about, depositing dinars in an Iraqi account.
Well, Iraq has been negotiating the establishment of not only other nations establishing banks in their country, but they're establishing banks in other countries like the United States, like Britain, like France, etc. Personally, myself, I don't think I'm going to go to an Iraqi bank to exchange my currency. But for that reason, I'm not going to Wells Fargo. I got my issues with Wells Fargo. The only way I walk into a Wells Fargo branch is if it's the only bank on planet Earth I can do my exchange. So, it's like I said, once the dinar reinstitutes, hopefully we'll have, even if it's only 10 days, a small window to contact the large banks in the United States that have the computer capability to exchange the dinar and some of these other currencies like the dong, which I hope will follow shortly thereafter, try to work out its best deal I can, go in there, negotiate my exchange, make sure that they don't hand me a 10 or 21-day hold on my money, and I'm getting my money out of the bank as quickly as possible. As a matter of fact, one of the things I wanted to discuss on the call, I decided not to at the last second, was my deep concern about the banking system and what's going on, because our banking system is teetering on the edge as far as I'm concerned. And I'm frankly real nervous, even leaving money in an American bank for any length of time. Even if I'd rather transfer it to treasuries. I know it's a government issue, but it's not the bank. It's a direct government IOU. So, at least that is even better than a U.S. bank. But, I'm going to negotiate my exchange and get out as quickly as I possibly can.
Right. So that brings me to another question. So I understand what you're saying about the U.S. banks. Is holding money in the stock market? I'm not talking about necessarily specific stocks, but like let's say a mutual fund account just to get it out of the banks.
Well, that's one.
Is that still considered unsafe?
Well, it's funny. In my opinion, the banking system is in such a condition right now that perhaps owning some of the more conservative mutual funds, like an index fund or something like that to track the market at this point in time might actually be less risky. That shouldn't be the case, but it is. The other thing I'm looking at right now is some of the state banks, Texas, Arizona, Montana, that are creating their own digital currency. So once again, we'll be utilizing the currency, the state currency, rather than the national currency, which in my opinion, and they're gold backed, so that to me makes more sense. But to me, a bank is only good for two things: convenience and liquidity. I don't want to invest in banks. I only want enough money in a bank for my cash flow needs. I want my money elsewhere. Myself personally, I'm going to be purchasing REITs, real estate investment trusts. I might purchase direct real estate, but I don't want my money in the banking system at all.
Right.
And even the stock market, I'm going to minimize what I would ordinarily hold. The next couple of years, I think, are going to be very, very difficult for American citizens, and it's the wrong time to have a chunk of money like this. People have invested for a decade or more, and it'd be ashamed to go to the bank and then have a calamity happen 3 days after you finally got made, and then this happens. So, the minute I walk out of the bank, my mind is turning right. Okay, how quickly can I get this money out of the bank and it worth to protect it from what these guys have in store for us?
Right. Okay. So another question. I know that you can buy REITs through and invest in REITs through the stock market. Are you talking about that? Is that the only route, or are you aware of another route to invest in those?
Well, yeah. Well, of course. Yeah. One of the things we were going to do, if we do have the seminar, is we were going to have one of the Schwab individuals there. I like Schwab because I like their diversity. Overall, I like the Schwab, and Schwab has a number of REITs in there. They're rated. For example, you can invest in a REIT that's paying as high as 7 or 8% dividend. So, that's a nice return. And if you are a person with a net worth, let's say, of under $1 million, and then you're worth over $10 million after the revaluation, even if you're earning 5 or 6% on $10 million, you're earning twice the money you were earning before at a high risk, and with virtually little or no risk with a REIT. And, of course, the REIT being basically a portfolio of real estate investments, you're out of the financial market. So, I like that. And it's
right.
Liquid. You can liquidate it that day if you want.
Right. Okay. So I appreciate that information. And one other quick question. Should we be aligning with our CPAs at this point in preparation with this in mind for, we're going to have to move very quickly to pay these taxes?
Okay. All right. What I say is going to be very unpopular. I'm going to get a lot of heat for it. But I've been doing this for over a decade. And my experience has been from attorneys and CPAs that have called on behalf of a client. They have no earthly idea what the hell's going on with the currency. First of all, they either think it's a scam or they think it's not going to happen in their lifetime. They don't understand our trust. They don't understand how the tax. You talk to three guys and you get three different answers from them. So, I really don't know how to answer that question right now. I'm going to rely on the advice we get from our people who have been involved in this with us for over a decade. And like I said, if the Dinar reinstitutes, hopefully we can get a letter to the Oh, that's the other thing I didn't mention. We went to the IRS, and the IRS bumped it up to the Treasury, and the Treasury said they won't respond until the event, the reinstitution. So are they not giving us answers because they don't want us to know, or do they actually not know themselves? That's scary. So, we're on the fly. If I wake up tomorrow morning and they say the Dinar reinstituted, I'm just going to be on a phone call and everyone will go, okay, we got to figure this out. Who can we talk to? We got to get the answers to the following questions right now. Right now, we got to know. What do we have to do? Do we have to go to another firm? How much do we have to pay? What do we have to do to get the right answer?
Right. Okay.
If it happens in July, we can take a deep breath because we got till October. But if it happens now, we're in a world of hurt.
Yeah, I'm going to pray for July.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say I'm going to pray for July.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you.
All right, Jim.
Okay?
Thank you so much.
Right. Certainly. You take care, Leslie. Well, Leslie was our last caller for today. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I know that we've discussed some potential issues we're going to have post-RV, but in terms of the reinstitution of the dinar, it's all pretty good news. This is what we've been counting on. We knew it was going to probably be very stressful when this time came. The bunch running the show right now aren't helpful. That's unfortunate as well. But we're going to do what we have to do. Again, best case scenario would be a reval sometime in July. But if it happens before then we're just going to have to move as quickly as we possibly can. Again, if the things we've discussed on this call, I hope you'll subscribe and listen to future calls and contact us for our initial no obligation package. Again, our email is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com, and our phone service is 307-274-4122. We will, of course, have a call next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we'll be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for listening, everyone, and have a great week. Bye-bye.